Hey people, this is Fernando doing another video for the more survivalists and answering a question that I got in the comments in YouTube. What is the safest country in the world? What are some of the best and safest countries for me to live in if I'm considering moving elsewhere? We've all known what's been happening this weekend in Israel with the conflicts over there, and people wonder, could this happen to me? Is this something that I should be worried about? What's the future that we're looking at depending on where you are? And is there somewhere safer to you to live in? Okay, let's address that. Before I go on, if that's specifically one of the things you're wondering about, I strongly recommend you get Bugging Out and Relocating. This is a book I wrote specifically about such a thing. And I would also recommend Street Survival Skills and Surviving the Economic Collapse. Based on my experience in Argentina, these three books of mine will give you a nice start in terms of preparedness, especially for this sort of thing, in terms of making a decision of where is it that you want to live, if you're looking to leave your country, or even if you're considering relocating within the United States itself. It's not all the same. Not all states enjoy the same quality of life or the same level of security. So, safest place in the world, right? That's where I'd like to live. Okay, one of the things you come across quickly is Global Peace Index. That sounds very nice, unless, yeah, but sure, Global Peace Index. Let's check this out. How globally peace is my country or not? Well, here you have the ranking. Number 1, Iceland, Denmark, Ireland. Oh, and it's not all that bad. This does make quite a bit of sense. Heck, if you're looking at the United States, it's actually ranking super low, which, okay, but what is it they're even looking at? Nuclear and heavy weapons capability. Is that something bad? Financial contribution to the UN peacekeeping missions, all right? Ease of access to small arms and light weapons, they probably don't consider that a good thing. And is it realistic to think that access to weapons and firearms is something that goes against the peace in a country? That is simply not true. That is not reflecting the reality. But it is no surprise that they took that into account because, for example, a country like, where's Switzerland? Oh, right. Okay, there it is, right? Switzerland is ranking number 10 behind Japan, Slovenia, Portugal, even though is arguably much safer, but because they have a lot of access to firearms, it's one of the most armed populations on the planet, Switzerland does not rank as highly as it probably should be. I have no doubt whatsoever that Switzerland is safer than Ireland. I pretty much can assure that's the case, but because Ireland has pretty much very little or no access to firearms, and it has a military capability that's not nearly as good as Switzerland, it just ranks a lot better, which for me makes no sense whatsoever. One of the things I personally take into account is the homicide rates per 100K. That's a solid, strong number in terms of, yeah, this is how many people get killed in your country, and a dead guy is kind of like hard to argue with. Now, it's not impossible because it really depends on, oh yeah, these were, combatants of a conflict, or these people just went missing. We don't know what happened with these guys. Both of these could easily happen depending on the country you're looking at, so you do have to keep that in mind. But if we're going for the safest country in the world, well, you do have that information. American Samoa, all right, super safe, right? Holy See, yeah, but it's the freaking Vatican. I mean, it's not even a real country. It's like one of these city nation states. Island of Man, yeah, sure, Island of Man is probably a nice place to live in. But again, tiny little island where it's mostly banking and financial institutions, then I'm pretty sure that some of the people living here are super happy with it. Monaco. Are you really gonna live in Monaco? San Marino. Do you even know what San Marino is? It's a small little town in Italy that is one of these city-states. So sure, it ranks very nicely, but it's really not much of a country in terms of anything practical for you to move and live in. Japan, yeah, Singapore, Japan. These two rank very high. But these are countries in which, personally, I don't feel that I'm enjoying much freedom or liberty in a country like Singapore, where you're almost talking about an authoritarian regime running things. Japan is barely, much different. So Hong Kong, that's damn China. What about Qatar? Right? And as we start moving down, yeah, sure, Ireland is pretty safe. What I'm going at here is you cannot just look at the homicide rate and just make a decision, even though it is very much a valid statistic to consider. My country, Argentina, 4.6 homicide rate. I like this one. ourworldindata.org. You can look it up. It's nice because you have this interactive map, and it tells you not only the current rates, at least the latest one, but also the trend of the last few years. So as you see, Argentina is basically stabilized in 4.6 homicide, and yeah, I mean, it's not all that bad compared to other parts of South America. A little bit better than, you know, and actually Uruguay, that used to be a lot safer, is actually going through quite a bit of a rough patch there. Brazil, for sure, a lot more homicide in Brazil, a lot more homicide in Colombia. Central America, definitely the case. Mexico, yeah, one of the most dangerous places. What about Venezuela? Venezuela has always awful homicide rates. It has been dropping, apparently. Do we believe them or not? It is a socialist authoritarian regime, so personally I don't believe them much. But yeah, Venezuela has always been considered one of the murder capital. It is also true that probably homicide it focuses mostly in the capital, in Caracas, in Venezuela. But yeah, still very high, okay? Mexico. What about the United States? United States, 6.8. That is quite high. It's actually higher, quite a bit higher than Argentina. And the typical thing I hear is, oh yeah, Fernando, but that's only in the big cities. Well, dude, it is still the same country. That argument of, oh yeah, but in my little neck of the woods, we're super safe. Well, I could argue that you'll be challenged finding anywhere safer than, you know, Venezuela, Ushuaia, right? Not Venezuela, Ushuaia here at the end of the freaking planet. Yeah, that is super safe. It's also very damn cold. But crime in Argentina also focuses mostly in Buenos Aires, Córdoba, Capital, and a couple other cities. It's not exclusive to the United States. This exceptionalism thinking of, oh yes, but in the United States, you don't understand that crime focuses mostly in Chicago. Yeah, a genius, we all know that crime mostly focuses in the large cities and in the crappy states. Yeah, that's always the case. There's always a country in which you have some places safer. Still, the number applies to the entire country. It is not all the story, but it's an important part of it. If you have a number that's kind of high, it's not always good. And as you see, very interesting, it is going up. If I compare, for example, in Argentina, it's actually going down, and it's been stabilizing for a few years now. But in the case of the United States, it's actually going up. That's concerning. That is something that you should be worried about. Maybe looking at moving to some other states, some of the safer states. And there's no free lunch. There's always some compromise. I mean, you have 50 states to choose. Some will be safer than others. Usually the northern, eastern coast states, which are unfortunately very blue, but you have New Hampshire, Maine, which usually quite left-wing leaning. But it's also true that they're quite safe. And yeah, if you're living in a little cabin in Maine, you are going to be enjoying quite a bit of safety. It's also going to be damn cold, which is something else to keep in mind. But as always, there's things to consider. This is one of the important factors. It's not the end of the story. Canada 2.0. That is damn safe. Well, yeah, it is. Kind of. I mean, most of Europe will be much safer than Canada. But also notice this. It's been going up for several years, steadily so. And we also have to say that Canada is more of a authoritarian government by the day, especially in the last few years. They've banned firearms. You have Justin Trudeau, that I don't know if he's legally or not the son of Fidel Castro. He certainly acts as if he is, and that's really not a nice trend. If it's a country that at some point it was interesting as an option to live in, if you were looking for a high quality of life, high living standards, safety, sure, pretty cold, very cold, but safe. Now, well, increasingly not so safe anymore, and very much a commie authoritarian regime. If you're looking at some of the safest countries in the developed world, you're probably going to be looking at these in Europe. And here you have, for example, France 1.1. And notice how France, in spite of the bad press it gets, and it does get a lot of bad press, very often not accurately portraying how the country is, it's pretty stable in terms of violence and homicide rates, even though you're being shown that it's almost like a war zone. What about UK? 1, okay, that's a strange number there. Ireland, 0.44, super safe. Now, it has its things that you may like more or you may like less, depends, but undisputably, Ireland super safe. Spain 0.61. That is super safe too. Portugal, a little bit higher, but still always considered a very safe country, Portugal. Portugal is very interesting. It has a great quality of life, super accessible cost of living, and so on. So yeah, it's a great place for people who want to retire. So Italy, 0.50, and it's been dropping a lot, right? Yeah. Yeah, so violence in general in Italy has been dropping considerably. And this is something that may surprise many Americans that think, oh, yeah, Europe is on the brink of war. No, Europe is steadily going down in homicide rates. I mean, most of these countries, just check these out. It's pretty much, and this has been going on. It's not just from the last 500 years. This is also from the last few decades. You see it just steadily going down and becoming safer, not the opposite, which is what most of the mainstream media would love for you to believe. And the same reflects here. If you look at some of the safer places in the world and so on, it just shows what I'm explaining here. Now, this is not the end-all solution to all things, right? Again, just steadily going down in the last 20 years. But it's not just about homicide rate. You have to look, if you're considering moving elsewhere, especially if you're looking at moving to some other country. I like this website quite a bit. This is worlddata.info. And what I like here is that you are able to adjust depending on what's important for you, right? So here, this is the default setting. Australia, the best country in the world to live in. Okay. Sure, why not? I mean, yeah, probably not all that terrible. Stability, rights, health, safety, climate, cost. Probably climate benefits them a lot. Cost of living, popularity, and total. In terms of stability, and especially in terms of rights, 95%, I think that is a very left-wing commie view of what rights actually are. Because if you consider that Hong Kong, being China, has 82, then this is not something that I would pay much attention to you according to what you as worlddata.info, right, consider to be civil rights. But still something that I'd like to use in terms of adjusting the different statistics here. So Hong Kong, not so much. San Marino, again, small little nation state in Italy. Switzerland, yeah, for sure. Switzerland for me would definitely, objectively speaking, Switzerland is probably the best country in the world. Personally, I think Switzerland is the best country in the world because you have access to, you have a country that has a very clear idea of what it wants its government to be, which is critical these days, especially with the authoritarian regimes rising all over the developed world. Switzerland has their shit together very clearly. We want our government to do this. We don't want them to interfere in our private life. Just be effective, do your thing, and let us live our lives. They're great at adjusting and getting that done. And you have access to firearms. You have a beautiful country. Pretty damn cold. Opposite to that, Spain, also ranking super high. You have wonderful climate. That's why probably it ranks so high. If I adjust here in terms of climate, and if I don't care, I love rain. I love rainy weather. I mean, screw sunny Spain. And yes, if you adjust, Spain drops considerably, right? Drops quite a bit. So does Australia, by the way, which is interesting. If you don't care a damn about weather, Switzerland, best country in the world to live in, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, anyway, let's go back to this and adjust accordingly. So what is that being considered here? Health. And it's not just health which is available, but how much access to you have to that. I don't care if you have the best health care in the planet if I cannot buy it, if it's not affordable for me. So that is something that often is taken into account in these statistics. Safety, so on. Popularity is an interesting one because that's how popular it is for other people. If you don't care about popularity, what happens if I adjust that? Well, there you go. Hong Kong, yeah. Switzerland, Hong Kong better than Switzerland? Yeah, I very much doubt that's the case. But anyway, so you see how it's not just always a clean-cut picture. You have to analyze this through what you want for you. What is important for you? Safety will definitely be, at least for me, one of the main things to consider. I want to live in a safe place. And you definitely have those. And if you're in the United States, you definitely have states that are safer than others. And you have counties or parts of the state or towns that are safer than others. Still, don't be naive in terms of this number mattering. This just shows how safe or unsafe a country may actually be. But again, it really depends. For example, given recent events, if you look at Israel, 1.94, yeah, sure, that's not stopping something horrible happening to you this weekend. But even more to my point, what about, you have that Palestine? What is this even? 0.88. Palestine, they mean what? Gaza Strip, the place that's being dropped like 1,000 bombs in the last 24 hours, bombing what's basically now only rubble, and that has only a 0.88 homicide rate. Okay, depends on how you consider that. What is like combatants? Those are not taken into account. But my point is, this is not the final number in terms of how safe or not a country may be. Sure. I saw this one. I thought, man, that is 0.88. Okay, but even in Israel, right, 1.94. Yeah, sure, but is that really? Or Egypt, 1.34. Yeah, okay. So there's the no data available, and there's the not so credible data available, and then there's the countries in which you have more or less a number to go by. Folks, all for now. Remember that if you're interested specifically in this kind of thing, bugging out and relocating is probably what you want to get, and also surviving the economic collapse, street survival. Folks, see you next time. Take care.